Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my memory hacks, how to remember more, tips and tricks. How well do you remember the things you need to do in life? A little? A lot? Maybe you remember all of it. If you were like me, you weren't born with a photographic memory. You had to remember things the hard way. In our modern day life, it's important now more than ever to try to retain as much knowledge as we can day to day. Because in this complex life, there are so many things to keep track of and for us to monitor. Things like milestone dates, work activities, and personal commitments. It can be quite hectic without a system in place to help you memorize things. But not only can having a good memory help with keeping track of dates, it can also help you further your personal growth as well. Because the more we remember, the more we can make a positive impact on our life. This is through learning the mistakes from our past, spending less time redoing things, and forming better personal relationships. I want to distill down my tips and tricks on how to form better memories and keep them, and remove the mystery of how to have better memory. It's really not as tough as you think, as long as you follow these strategies. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about my background, my tips, and my general thoughts. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell if you like this content. And here we go. So the other week, I realized something that I hadn't realized before. Memory is really important for our personal growth. And this is a big reason why people don't change or struggle to grow. They forget what they need to do. I really do think that most people want to change for the better, but what gets in their way is that they forget to put it at the forefront of their mind. New things and different way of doing things often end up at the bottom of their to-do list, and so they just forget about them. For example, a different route to work, changing restaurants, or even personal growth ideas. Sometimes we have these really good ideas on how to improve our lives, but in the moment we forget to write it down and it becomes lost. And most of the time, we simply forget we had those good ideas in the first place, and then we just continue on with our lives. This can happen with simple, small things, but it can also happen for big and large things that we want to improve. In my younger days, this happened to me a lot. I would have great ideas, but then I probably would forget to write them down. And then that same idea wouldn't come back to me until a couple of weeks later, or sometimes years later. But the intent was always to try to implement those ideas to improve my life. This had led me to the revelation that if I simply wrote down what I needed to do at that moment, I would have changed my life for the better during that time, instead of waiting longer for it. And if you extrapolate that kind of habit over time, you would see that your life would change as a result of it. What I mean by that is, if you implement every good idea you had the instant you had it, your life would be drastically changed. Because most of the time, we don't have the ability to change our lives in that instant, so it usually takes a long time for something to implement. And that lag time causes us to change less overall during our entire lives. And looking at it from another perspective, if you had perfect memory, you would always learn from your mistakes because all your mistakes would be readily available to you. And you could tell yourself, oh, I know exactly how this is going to go, so I'm not going to make that mistake again. And similarly, if you have to spend time memorizing something, if you had perfect memory, you would only have to look at it once and memorize it. This video is not to give you perfect memory, but help you to improve your memory a little bit. Because even a small difference over a long period of time can have a drastic impact on your life. So here are my hacks to help you remember more. Number 1, get rested. One of the most basic ways to have better memory is to get the proper amount of sleep every night. That's because sleep helps you to strengthen the memories you made during that day, and it also helps you to link other memories to each other. In college, I never once had an all-nighter because I knew the detriment to sleep that it had on me. Because at a certain point, I needed sleep. There was no way I can cram more information into my brain without it. If I tried to stay up all night, my brain wouldn't process that information properly and I would lose memories as a result of that. And I would be absolutely rubbish during that test or midterm exam because I wouldn't be able to remember anything. I'm definitely someone who needs the proper amount of sleep to help me be useful in my daily life. So rest really helps you to form good memories and also to help you organize those thoughts. Check out my previous video on how to sleep better for my tips and tricks on getting more rest, where I go in depth on the strategies that I use to get the proper amount of sleep every night. In general, you should always strive for the proper amount of sleep for your individual body each and every night. It is not only for your health, but also the long-term formation of your memories as well. Number 2, always write it down. For things that I cannot or will not be able to remember, I write it down. Even if it's just a simple task, I tend to write it down as well, since it's easier to lose track of it because it's not as important, or it's too simple. I use Google Keep to write down everything that I need that's important to me. Check out my previous video if you want to understand how that really helps me in detail. When I'm taking notes in general, I try to write down as much as I can, getting very specific if possible. This is so I can accurately recall what was said to me and also provide the context for that conversation. So why do I go through all this trouble? Because memories require context, and that's everything. If you simplify or paraphrase things, you might not have a strong memory association with it. There's always a tendency to try to filter something or shorten it down, but this creates bad memories, because it might not be an accurate representation of what you need to memorize. When we write everything down, it might not make sense in the near term, but over the long term, it might provide you some value. So for example, say I kept a journal as a child. I would write down things that had happened to me at the time. In the near term, I wouldn't really understand what I went through, but as an adult, I could look back on what I wrote and provide context for what happened to me. So if you really want to remember something, write it down and keep it forever. And add as much detail and specifics as you possibly can. Because in the end, memories that we keep in our brain might not be the most objective. We think we know what happened, but there's always some inherent bias that we bring to the table. Number 3, focus on the specifics. I alluded to this earlier, but when you're trying to form a memory of something, be as specific as possible. By focusing as much as you can on those specific details, you can form a stronger memory by anchoring it to your mind. For example, if you're trying to remember a blue car, it would help you better to remember a blue car with specific details in mind. For example, a blue car with a dented hood, broken taillights, and a specific license plate number. Or instead of a white man, it's a white man with plaid shirts, green shoes, and a curly mustache. Specific details help create a better image in our mind's eye to help us remember. And the more unique it is, the more it helps anchor it in our mind, even applying it to non-picture related things like work notes or school notes. You can put more details than necessary to help you remember things. In my work or school notes, I tend to take down conversations as well because they help me give context to whatever I'm trying to learn. And also, if people ask specific questions, I'll jot them down and quickly jot down the answer if there is one. Because when you're trying to remember something, it really helps not to be generic. Getting specific and knowing the context around it will help you remember more. So focus on the details and be specific as possible. Number 4, make context links. So following my previous tips, when you connect your memories with context, it helps you strengthen them more. Because the more associations you can make with that specific memory, the more you're going to remember it. For example, you can remember that blue car better if your uncle had the exact same one, or it had the color that you want for your own car. For that person example, you can associate his green shoes with something like Yoshi or something very lime green. Something that's specific, unique, and can make relations to other things in your life. The goal is to use your existing memories and try to relate it to whatever you're trying to memorize. Because that way you can recall your memory faster because it's already associated with something that you're familiar with. And it'll be different than other memories you form without those contextual associations. You can also create narrative and stories around that object or thing that you're trying to memorize. For example, linking the white male with the plaid shirt to the blue car with the dent in its hood. You can create associations with different objects within your story. It doesn't all have to link together. The idea is that you make it unique enough so that you can remember it for the long term. So when you're trying to remember something, link it with important things within your mind to help you associate more with that. And number 5, attach emotions to it. Lastly, and probably the most controversial, is to attach emotions to your memories. I would not go to this as a first option, but if you're trying to create a strong memory, attaching emotions to it works very well. We as humans do it all the time without us even knowing it. And this is controversial due to the fact that we cannot necessarily control what memory we remember when we attach the emotions to it. That bad childhood memory, a fight with a spouse, or a joyful vacation, you can't control what you remember. It is whatever powerful emotions that's with that memory that gets lodged in our brain. And because they are so powerful, we can remember them years and decades after they happened. And as a general rule, the more genuine the emotion, the better the memory will form. I can't specifically say how you can attach a certain emotion with a certain memory, but I'll give you an example from my past. In my mid-20s, I was dealing with a maximum frustration during my dating life. And at some point during my mid-20s, I decided that I will do whatever it takes to get better at dating. This one event was so powerful that it drove me to make life changes from then on. And every time I would try to deviate or go back to my old habits, this constant memory in the back of my mind pushed me to get better. It drove me to create a lot of positive changes in my life, and I'm thankful that I remembered that I needed to do it in the first place. Although I can't recall the specifics of that particular event, the emotions carried me the rest of the way. They gave me power, and that power changed my life for the better. So take care when you're using emotions to try to help you form long-standing memories. It's a double-edged sword, and you might end up making memories that you don't want to keep. But if you're able to use it and harness it properly, it can make drastic changes in your life and help you keep the memory of why you're doing something in the first place, and even drive you to better personal growth. And now let's go through some of my general thoughts before we conclude. Although these tips are more for remembering things in general, the other use of this is for personal growth and development. Because sometimes on the journey of growth and development, we have to understand why we're doing it in the first place. Memories, especially the mistakes we made in the past, are big drivers of why people go through personal growth and development. But that only works if we choose to remember those mistakes and learn from them. If we forget, then we run the risk of making those same mistakes over again. For example, my dating situation was a unique case in which I had to learn from my mistakes or else I wouldn't be successful. And it was important for me to remember why I'm doing it in the first place so I don't backtrack. So memory really plays a key part in how we grow as a person. And also, the more we remember about our past, the better our life will be in general. With a better memory, it's easier for us to keep better track of things in life, gains in productivity, foster relationships, and our own well-being. As an adult, I can only recall a small fraction of my entire life. Most of it is just lost to time. That I think is really sad because I lost my connection to who I once was. So many accomplishments, failures, and memories are just lost forever. Keeping a record as best I can is the best way to preserve my current self for my future self. So those are my tips and strategies on how to remember more. We are a product of our memories. The more we remember, the more we know ourselves. Having a better memory can not only help ourselves, but with our work and our personal relationships. It permeates every aspect of our lives, so the better we remember things, the more helpful it'll be for us. It's a very important skill to improve because the older we get, the more valuable our memories are. So the keys to making stronger memories are to get sleep, focus on the details, and make context links. And if you still have trouble retaining information, write as much of it as you can down on paper. So thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what's your favorite memory hack and how has that helped you. And I'll see you next time.